Well, we're finally back, and I tell you what, it's been 2 weeks since I've been able to put one out, but I've been working out of town for 2 weeks straight, a few hours north of here, doing some boiler work at some churches, and it's been busy. So, we're carrying on with our timber framing made easy. When I say made easy, I'm not saying the timber framing is easy. This series is more to simplify the layout, give you guys the basic skills. It's nothing... It's not going to be a miracle thing that's just going to make you know how to timber frame, but it's going to give you the basics. That's the whole idea here. So tonight what we're working on is laying out your brace mortises, and we're going to cut the mortises, see how far we get, and we're just going to carry on. Remember what I said in the first video, these few joints here, the mortise, the tenon, and your braces are the three most important basic fundamental skills you need to know to cut your own timber frame, make it all work, all that good stuff. So anyway, stay tuned. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you on the other side of it. All right, so one of the things that seems to confuse a lot of people on the timber framing and a lot of the questions I've had is this measurement for the brace on your beam and your posts. Remember, your posts are your vertical members, your beams are your horizontal members. So I always say, now this one that we're working on is a 2x2 layout, so it's really going to be 24-inch layout. But if we're going to measure, if we're going to do a 1/2-inch housing, so our brace is going to sit down in here 1/2 inch. That's why we cut that the way we did, and it'll become evident here in a minute. We don't want to just measure from this face right here. We just don't want to measure down 24 inches and go there. We have to take into account that that thing's going to be a 1/2 inch inside that beam, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch inside that post. So we're actually going to measure down 23.5 inches from this face down here. I already have my measurement, and we're going to measure up 23.5 inches from this face up onto our beam. So we're going to take the handy dandy Big L. Well, let's see, let's carry my marks a little bit. We're going to be at 1.5 inches. So you guys probably can't see that, can you? See if I can get you in a little closer. So this is going to be the basic layout of our brace housing. Now we also want to lay out the mortise, and we're going to come in 3/4 inch because this is a short, it's pretty stubby brace, or pretty thin tenon we're doing on this, and it really doesn't have to be any more than what it is. So we also want to make sure, pretty good there, pretty good there. So this is all going to be waste right here. Pretty much all this is going to end up being waste. What I want to do, we're going to drill this out by hand. So I want to get a center line here, my 3/8 inch. My 3/8 inch. Okay. So that's going to be the gist when we're laying out the face of that. Let me move you guys again. Now I don't always do this when I very seldom do I do this when I am using my chain mortiser. But for demonstration purposes, it's not a bad idea. Now here's something you can get yourself in a bind real quick with. It's not a bad idea to hold your brace on there a little bit so that you could see how it's got to fit in there. And it's going to sit like that. It's important to do that once in a while, especially when you're starting out, because I could tell you I have cut on the wrong side of the line more than once. It's a very frustrating thing. So I'm going to lay my housing out here and what the side of this would look like. Now keep in mind, this isn't really going to get cut. I know this is going to be 3 inches. Tenon's about 1 3/4 inches. Let's see here. Now keep in mind, your mortise depth, you want just a little bit deeper. You want that just a little bit deeper than what your actual tenon is. Because as that wood shrinks and things like that, you don't want the tenon pushing your joints apart. 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch, your goal. You guys see that okay? No, of course not. It's a little fuzzy here. Focus. So there we go. That's what it's going to look like on the inside by the time you get all this said and done. You have your housing right here. It's going to give you that 1/2 inch depth. And you can also, I can learn how to run my equipment right. You can carry this line also and kind of see what you're going to need there. Now before I cut this, I'm just going to hold my piece in there and see how it looks. Of course I have that damn planer right in the way. So that right there lines up perfect with all our lines. Now we can start getting rid of this thing. So if you're going to drill these out, I'm going to do this by hand just because it's actually, if you have good sharp bits, it's just as easy. So I'm going to lay out right how far I have to go here. It helps too, unless you want to drill out a whole lot more than you need to. Get a mark on that bit where you need to stop. Now I'm doing this by hand because some of you guys want to see this done by hand. The trick here, get everything going down as square and straight as you can. Now I'm going to use a drill bit here that is a little bit narrower than what I need. And that leaves me plenty of room to clean up. It's a good sharp bit. Now these bits here, these are just a cheap set off of Amazon. Just going to eyeball that. Pretty good. And just try to make it go down straight. Dry pine does not like to drill out very nice, I can tell you that. Doesn't like to dry out worth a damn. I'll start getting this material out of here. It's kind of a small chisel for this, but I don't have a 3/4 inch timber frame and chisel. I need to make one here over the course of the winter. Now it's pretty important on these to get them square. If these are out of whack, these braces will actually throw your timber frame out of square if you're not doing it right. So it's pretty important. Just get these as nice as you can. Like I said before, the last couple of videos, working with green pine is much nicer than working with this old dried out stuff that I'm using. Make sure you take these sides down nice and slow and easy. Don't try to go too deep at once, because you get that fishtail on the bottom of your joint. And that fishtail is going to make your frame loose. If you just take your time with this and go easy, the material will clean out just fine for you, and you won't be fighting it. This chisel right here, this was a $5 flea market find up in Maine here a couple years ago. If you guys are looking for timber framing tools and you want the old stuff, a lot of times you can find them in places like that. Especially if you go somewhere where timber framing was big. I mean, out west it's not as easy to find this stuff, just because by the time the West really got built up and kind of moved along from timber framing, you were getting a lot more stick building going on. Now as you go, you take your speed square and just kind of see where you're at for your angle, and I can already tell we're a little too shallow. So we have to be somewhere about in there. So I'll get my bevel up this time so I dig a little deeper. And yes, I am quite spoiled with a chain mortiser. So once you get your mortise down where you want it, start working on your housing. Housing's pretty straightforward. It's no different than any others. And yes, a router is much easier for this. It's much easier. Shave down to your line. Man, I am butchering the hell out of this. Thinking I might as well cut this one out with a chainsaw. Oh, I hate dry pine. Definitely better get in practice again before the next frame. Alright, see how crappy this is going to fit. I can't stress how important it is for these to fit right. If you're off a 1/16 in a brace on a really long timber, the time you get down to the other end of that timber, you're going to have issues. So it's really important to get these to sit in square. And I gotta take it down quite a bit more. Let's give her the old test fit. I had to do a little cleaning up in here. When you're putting your joints together, they should go together about that easy right there. When you're testing it, take your speed square or whatever. Make sure you're in there at a nice 45-degree angle. When you do that, you're checking that, make sure everything sits nice and flush on your face. You don't have any big gaps or anything like that. And that's a nice fit. So what's actually doing the work on this brace is holding everything square. Remember, these joints are in compression, so you're going to have stuff pushing against it. That face right there and that housing shoulder is doing pretty much all the work. This is also doing the work in the bottom of it. Right here, you're not really getting much bearing here, and you're not really getting much bearing there. If you have bearing on these two surfaces, after you cut the joint, you need to remove a little material, because as this timber shrinks down, it's going to push against this, and it's going to start pushing your framing apart against the pegs, things like that. It's going to throw the building out. So you always go to that 1/8 or 1/4 deeper on the end of your tenons. So these should slide in nice. You should have a nice tight fit around there. I could have done this one a lot better. This is the first brace I've done in quite some time, but it will work. Okay, so this joint did not go as clean as I normally get them. I'm so out of practice, but it works just fine for demonstration purposes. Well, of course, if I put the right end now, I don't know if you guys probably can't see the lines, but so it should fit in there decent. And when you hold it up, it's gonna be something like that. Your tying member is gonna come across. And that's a way you can check these, make sure you're doing right. You can hold a level across on this shoulder and kind of line it up with that mortise for your tying member. But it could definitely be better. I'm going to tell you, old dry pine is a bitch to work with. But that's the nice thing about a housing also. If you're a little bit off on some things, that housing will actually hide that quite a bit. Now, yeah. So that's her. So the next time out, we will get the one on the tying member done, and we'll do a test fit up, and hopefully if we have time in that video, hopefully maybe we can discuss a little bit of peg layout, where they go, all that good stuff. Like I said, as far as your joints fitting together, you don't want these things so tight that you have to sit there and pound them in. You want them to kind of slide together nice. The nicest timber frames that go together is where they slide together with a nice thunk. I always like that. That is nice. You don't want it loose either. You don't want the joints sloppy in there, things like that, because it's just going to make the frame so it's not tight. You do want a tight frame, but it's a fine line between going together nice and pounding the shit out of it to get it together. Like I've said in many videos, if you have to pound the shit out of it to get it together, your joints are too tight, you need to do some trim work. But anyway, in other news, this spring we are heading back to the woods. I just secured a 2,000 acre hunting club to cut any of the timber with needles on it that I want for the cost of going out and getting it. It's about 2 hours away. It is pristine. It is beautiful. We're going to take the sawmill out there. We're going to set it up and we're going to start cutting everything for the next frame, which is going to be that much talked about house addition for my wife that I was talking about over a year ago. My body's back to fairly normal, so I kind of feel comfortable going back to the woods running a saw again. That was a bit of a hold up. Worried about being able to move out of the way of the trees quick enough if something happened. But so a friend of mine got a hold of me. He watches the channel. Hello, Terry. And he says, hey, you know, I got a hunting club, a hunting camp, 2,000 acres, and we want everything with needles gone because they choke out the hardwoods for their hunting. And I said, wow, that sounds pretty neat. So for a year, he's been trying to get me out there, and we finally lined it up last weekend. And I tell you, folks, it is God's country. It is absolutely gorgeous. And all those trees with needles, every one of them are hemlock. Hemlock is not my favorite material for timber framing, only because of it's not as stable as white pine, but it actually is a very good timber framing material. It is very strong stuff. It's a little more rot resistant than white pine, but none of the trees are monstrous, which is perfect. They're very straight. A lot of them about 14-inch trunks, which is perfect for what I need for the home edition, because to square off at an 8x8, you need an 11.5-inch diameter on the small end of a log to get your 8-inch timber. So we should be in really good shape. With the hemlock, we're not going to need huge timbers like we did with this barn with the white pine. The loads are totally different, but on that next timber frame, as we go through and we design, we're going to go through the whole design sequence again like we did way back when, but we didn't do it very well. But we're going to go through the whole thing, step by step, load calculations, all that good stuff, and where to get the information to cover those load calcs and all that good stuff. So anyway, stay tuned. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I don't know why I said stay tuned. I meant to say thanks for watching, everybody. See what happens when you go a couple weeks at a time without being able to get a video out? You get so rusty. You can't talk to the camera. You look like a mumbling fool over here. You know, and everybody thinks you're weird around you because you're out in your barn in the middle of the night talking to yourself. That's what you guys do to me. That's what YouTube does. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're going to keep going with this series. I haven't been filming the other stuff we do because I had a viewer mentioned, you know, if you could do the timber frame series without doing a bunch of different stuff in between videos, it might help with confusion. I think he's absolutely right. So we're going to stick to that program. So anyway, take it easy, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next one.